mic trouble with this thing, and I think I figured out why. I got this new GoPro, and I've got a gimbal that I hold on here most of the time. Most of the time when I'm doing these, talking to the camera, especially when I first come on, I walk out with a gimbal, and it just keeps things steady, a lot steadier, but the microphone is on the top and on the side, and I think that this gimbal just kind of inhibits the microphone when I'm talking. So this is what we got. I got the motor back in this thing yesterday during the day. I did not time lapse any of that. It literally took me 45 minutes to get this thing back in. I had a couple issues. One being the exhaust. We had to cut some of it out, which is not that big of a deal. I've got a flex pipe I've got to put on, and then there's this down pipe piece here. I don't know if you can see it on the floor there, that I have to fix, and the owner actually brought me this here, which is a little bit more of a curly cue. You can see the one that's on the floor there was cut right off, and I can't really use that. So he brought me this off the other motor so that I can weld the flex pipe on. So that's the flex pipe, and the flex pipe was broke on the motor that came out, and that's the catalytic converter. So essentially you're gonna have something that looks like this with a flex pipe in between. So my big dilemma right now is that we have this slight problem. The problem is when I started pulling the bolts out of the down pipe that was up in there. Let's see if I can get a good, oh, hold on a sec. Let's pan the camera up. So I don't know if you can see up in there, but that's where the down pipe connects to the exhaust manifold. And you can kind of see that some of the bolts are broke right off of it. So I welded on a nut, and I got two of them out, and I think I'm going to try to weld a nut on that one far to the far right, but the one on the far left, the stud is still in there, so I'm going to have to drill that out. I'm probably not going to time lapse me drilling all this stuff out. See if I can pan this back down. I don't think it's necessary. I'll probably just maybe do like a first startup video of it or something like that, and then I'll just kind of pan around in the engine bay. Me welding up under there is not going to make a good time lapse. So these are the things that you run into in the real world. You get into stuff like this, and you gotta adapt and make changes, and sometimes you have to let the customer know, you know, like, this thing's old. This is a 2003 or 2002, and things are going to be rusty, and you're going to have to fix stuff. And it's always better to let the customer know up ahead of time. You know, like I told this guy, this probably won't go smooth. And luckily, the motor in and out has gone a lot smoother than I thought. And I actually had to, so this is the old motor here, and it took me most of Saturday to swap over all of the accessories. So like this whole section here is all accessories, right? This whole area where my foot is where the alternator, the AC pump, the power steering, and the yeah, I guess that's it, the three things there: alternator, AC, power steering. There's one other thing up top, and there's a tensioner. Yeah, so it's just those three things. But when they took it from the junkyard, you can see I've got this whole box full of like cut pipes and wiring. This would have been a way easier job, but the junkyard that he got it from basically just hacked this thing out of a car. So that means they just cut pieces, cut pipes, and ripped it out as fast as they could. So it kind of boned me on the back end of things here, because it took me twice as long. So I got a whole day into swapping parts and pieces over. So, all right, well, I'm gonna stop this for now, and then, like I said, I'll probably just do like a quick thing once it's all running and back together 100%. So my goal for today, end of day, by the end of the day today, is to hopefully have the Subaru on this lift, clean the shop up a little bit, move my car out, put the Subaru on this lift backwards so that the back side or the front is facing back and the back is facing front. When I do engine bay work and stuff like that, I like it on that end of things. It's just my personal preference. It gets cluttered over here with my toolbox. You can see there's not a ton of room in between my toolbox and the front of the car, which is good when you're doing like engine work and stuff because your tools are really close. But I'm not gonna need a whole bunch of tools. I'll probably just roll my cart around with the grinder and cutting wheel and stuff like that. And I'm kind of hoping to get my car out of here in the next few days, like for good, put it in the other garage and put her second car outside and just put the two nice cars in that garage. And that way I've got more free space in here. I'm going to start jamming on that Subaru this week. I'd like to get the front nose of that thing welded on by the end of the week. And that's really my plan. And then we can move forward with that. So the orange car is still there. And what I'll probably wind up doing is double when I'm not working on the Subaru. I'll go double over on the orange car. But I can't wait to get to the Subaru. That's more of what you guys are looking to see and stuff like that. So I really want to get moving on it. And then we've got this Cabrio that I'll probably move where the Subaru is so that I can kind of work all three things at once. The engine bay is so close to being painted in that car. It's like minuscule number, and then the body work that is like pretty much done on it. That car is like ready for paint. It's been ready for paint for a while, so I really few projects out of all this I'd really like to get cleaned up and done and out of here. So all right, okay, so got this thing about all together. I know I left it yesterday. I still had a couple things to do. This is Wednesday. The last little clip you saw was Tuesday. I struggled big time with the exhaust to get the exhaust done. I had to grind, cut, drill bolts out of the downpipe exhaust manifold flange. It took me like 3 hours to do all that. But I have it all together. In my tearing stuff apart, lost the 3 bolts that hold this tensioner onto this bracket, which kind of stinks. I threw some stuff away because I thought that this new motor was going to come with some stuff, but all the accessories weren't on it, so I had to swap that over like I said in the last part of this video. I've got a really cool tool I'm going to show you guys. I think I'm going to try to mount the GoPro on the underside of the hood so that I can do this kind of hands-free and give you an idea. But I've got a couple cool tools. I've got one that basically puts a vacuum on the coolant system, and that's how I fill all coolant systems. It's really the only way to make sure that you get no air bubbles and whatnot in the coolant system itself. So I'll probably show you that when I get around to that, and I'm also going to probably put the GoPro on my toolbox for the first startup just to see what happens, so you guys can see my crazy hoo-yah that I do when I start a car for the first time when I'm by myself. Usually I like to have a second person here after I do a motor swap or any kind of massive motor type stuff, like when I put turbos on cars and do those kind of things. So that way somebody can either start the car and I listen in the engine bay, or vice versa if the second person is a mechanic. I have a friend of mine, Kenny, who works with me quite frequently. So I'm going to put the battery box in, battery in, tie down the coolant, fill the power steering, put the air box on. Probably take me 10 minutes, and I'm going to have the turnkey on this thing. I'll do it without the accessory belt for right now until I can figure out where the bolts are. This is the accessory belt tensioner I took off, we threw away because I thought that I was going to be okay throwing it away, and apparently I'm not. So okay, next shot you'll see should be this thing almost ready to run. I'm going to fill coolant. Okay, so I'm going to fill the coolant. And like I said, I've got this really cool tool that does that. Just got to get it out of my toolbox. So I have this tool. It's called a cooling system refiller, right? The object of this is, I don't know, maybe some of you have seen this, some of you haven't, but the object is you stick this in the coolant. Okay, so the camera fell off the side of the fender, so we rearranged it. I put it on the hood. And that's the cool thing about that suction cup mount. I can like kind of twist it and dangle it any which way. So, like I was trying to explain, is you stick this part in. These have a coolant ball that holds coolant. The Volkswagen is actually what's called a pressurized system. So a lot of cars you see an overflow and just the radiator and an overflow. An overflow has a cap, and when the pressure gets too high, it expels a little, and when it needs a little, it takes a little out of the reservoir too. Where Volkswagen is a 100% sealed system, there is no pressure relief really in one of these. The pressure in a Volkswagen will get up to like 30, 40 pounds, and there's a lot of pressure. So if you ever get a Volkswagen in a shop or an Audi, do not ever take this cap off if it's really hot. If the car's been running, it's just gonna blow off most generally and be a steam like bath in your face, probably melt your skin off. So be careful, don't do that. Try to let them cool down before you take the radiator cap off. That goes for basically any car, but Volkswagens and Audis are really bad because they're under like an immense amount of pressure. So what this tool is designed to do is you take your air line and you pull a vacuum on this here. Okay, so what you're gonna see, you might not be able to see it from there. I don't know if you can see, these hoses will suck tight, like whoosh, suck right tight. It takes all the air out of the system, opens the thermostat, and then what will happen is we'll stick this in the jug, and there's so much of a vacuum it'll just suck the coolant right in. The other alternative I've seen, they make like a funnel, and like they glug, and you run the car and run the car. This is the 100% sure shot way to fill a coolant system without getting any air pockets, and air pockets is the devil. That's what can really cause problems. So I turn my air on. We're gonna try to do this. I tried to make the explanations because this thing does make a little bit of noise, obviously. The other cool thing about this is there's a little gauge on it, okay? So as it starts to go, you want it to be in the green, okay? So what this is doing, it's doing two things. It's gonna fill, but it also pulls a vacuum on the system, so it sucks all the air out of the system. And if it doesn't come out of this red, like it needs to be in the green on this, right? If it's in the red, even the yellow, there's a leak somewhere in the system. And that's how you can tell if there's a leak in the system. So you obviously, if you're doing it the other way, you wouldn't know, right? You wouldn't have anything to tell you. You just fill it until it poured out on the ground, and then you'd be pissed. So what I like to do is I like to get everything set up. I like to get this opened up. We've got some Volkswagen pink coolant. Remember, Volkswagens, Audis, only pink rated Volkswagen coolant in these things. Do not put green coolant in them. They are not made for that. It is not good for them. This car actually had green coolant in it, and it was a mess. A lot of the fittings were rusted and rotted. It caused some real nasty corrosion things. So this thing has two valves. One is to open this tube that goes in here when you're ready, and one is to open up the vacuum, okay? So as this is happening, it's sucking the air out of the system, and it's pushing it out this tube here that I've got dumped towards the ground. It's actually pointing towards my leg. I'm gonna get covered. And the gauge is going up all the way in the green. So you basically wanna let that gauge go until it stops. Okay? So it's at 25, I think this is inches of water column. Yep. Which is an increment of measurement. You have PSI, and you have inches of water column. So for every 16 inches of water column is 1 PSI. Not that you ever need to know that fact, but that's how that works. 16 inches, 1 PSI. Okay, so we're there, right? So now I shut this one, and usually I like to let these sit for a minute just to see if that gauge, you know, goes down. Because if it goes down, there's a leak. It seems like it's good. So now I've got this tube in here. I'm going to open this valve, and you're going to see this hose is going to turn pink. And as it's turning pink, it's filling the cylinder. You know, it's filling all of the cavities. And I don't know if you can see this on the video, and I don't really want to move the video, but right here you can see this hose, and all these hoses are like pancaked tight, all the big ones. So watch this hose, it's gonna turn pink. And I also have to watch the coolant level because this thing sucks out a ton of coolant. And it's probably gonna take both of these jugs. You want to make sure that you stop it before the bottle is empty. I've actually got the hose kind of tipped down in the corner because I know that all of the coolant is going to run down in this very far corner here. That's it, okay? Just like that. There's probably this much left in there. I'm going to leave it. Like I said, you don't want to run it empty. When you do that, you're just introducing air into the system. You don't want to do that. The idea behind this is that to pull the vacuum, there is no air left in it, right? All the air has been sucked out. So you're trying to replace all of the air with coolant that was in the system. So see, it's still vacuumed in there. Put this in, you've still got pink in the hose. And as we were talking, this had gone down. So this scale goes from 0 to 30 inches of water column on here. When I started, it was probably at 27, and when I was opened up and it was pulling it in, it dropped down to 20, which 20 is where the yellow starts, and about 22.5 is where the green is. It just jumped back up as it started to equalize. You can still see the hoses, if you can see them, are still pancaked shut, but we just put a gallon of coolant in. So what I like to do is I let it equalize, and then I'll open it again. Okay, and this should take care of it. So what you'll see is this gauge, and you can't really see it, but I'll talk you through it. It's starting to come down. So it was at 20, now it's at 16. And as the air starts to really dissipate, the hoses will really open up, and this thing will really, really drop. Now I'm almost through another bucket here, another gallon. So hopefully we can get this done with what we have. I only bought 2 gallons. So I'm at like 5 inches of water column, and then the bottom's dropping right out of it. So what I like to do at this point is I like to reopen the air valve just to see if I can pull a little bit more. You can see this foam comes out, right? So you got to make sure you're kind of out of the way. And if it doesn't jump back up a lot, then it's probably pretty full. It jumped up maybe 2 or 3 inches of water column. So I do that once, and then I open this back up and just let it do its thing until this reads 0, basically. Which is where we're at. Okay, so now, easy cleanup, okay? Open both valves on this. Pick this up and just let the coolant drain back in the bottle. Okay. Lift it up higher and let it drain back in the bottle. Now there's probably, I don't know, maybe a quart between the two that's left. So it took almost 2 gallons. I'll grab the camera so you can see how full it filled this system too. Okay, so as you're looking here, you can see in the bottles, there's not a ton left in that one. Like I said, maybe there's even less in this one. So together is probably a quart. So it took a gallon and 3/4. Now if you can see the coolant inside of there, it's right there. It filled this thing, like fully filled it. So I guess what I'm gonna do, like I said, I don't have the accessory belt. I filled the power steering here a little bit. I'm gonna put this thing on the toolbox and we'll see what it looks like when it first starts. It might be a disaster, who knows. I always leave the coolant bottle cap off too, just in case there's air, but 95% of the time there's nothing in there. So hook the battery up. I've got everything all hooked up in here now. So yeah, I think we're ready to fly. Gotta put the rain tray back on, but I just want to start it, see how it sounds. Actually, I have to change the oil before I start this. I bought a filter and some oil. It says who knows what all that looks like. I just want to make sure it's good to go. All right, next thing you'll see is a fire up video.